Good morning. This is Talking Devils, a leading independent Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined by Manchester United legend Paul Parker. Good morning, Paul. How are you doing?
Good. Not too bad, Wayne. I'm feeling
Yeah.
a little bit fatigued, but in a certain way, I haven't got a game to do next weekend or midweek, so I'm quite pleased.
Yeah. The relief of the end of the season is certainly one that a few of us are feeling. So a lot to get through this morning. I don't really know where to begin. But I'm excited. I know we've got the big final of last week to speak about. Dave and I did a post-match podcast where sort of picked the bones of it, but I've not talked to you about it yet. But we should talk about the conclusion of the Premier League season. Hey, look, a win's a win. Apparently, that win was worth like £5 million to United in prize money going up the table yesterday, which is crazy when you think about it. Like, you get an extra 6 million. Manchester United have got an extra £6 million. So instead of finishing 16th, they finished 15th or whatever it is. It's 15th that they finished.
I lost interest.
Yeah, at one point they were 17th. So they finished 16th, 15th. Got an extra £6 million. Win 2-0 against Aston Villa, and to be honest, probably might even be United's best league performance of the season. They were really good. I thought they were even better than they were in the second half. I thought they were better against 11 men than they were against 10. Created a lot of chances, played with a kind of liberation. I mean, you can see from this United side, and I think that we've been saying it for a long time, but this kind of performance really puts it into perspective when you see there's no pressure on them to do anything, and they suddenly play with the liberation like that. And I think like it's easy to like criticize them for not being good enough, or it's easy to criticize a player for not being able to handle that pressure. But I think sometimes what gets lost is that it is important to remember that players who can handle that pressure and can take that step up, that's why they're the special players. That's why they achieve so much. Paul, you're like someone, you arrived at the club pretty much, well, I mean, twice as long. They waited twice as long as they currently are doing for a league title. But you arrived there when the club's dealing with this weight of expectation. I don't want you to be naming names, and I guess it's going to be difficult to do that when you're in a dressing room full of winners who did turn that around. But I mean, you must be familiar with, or at least empathise in a certain respect, how like making that step up and not being able to achieve. Do you know what I mean? Like when you see the effect that it has into like get a performance like yesterday, you can see that the pressure that they've been under because they're obviously talented players. There's no one saying that they're not talented footballers. The difference of being able to do that and win trophies at United is a different kettle of fish altogether. And a performance like yesterday is an interesting psychological experiment in it. It's in a way, right? You look at it, you say like they've played well, they've won, played some really good football in there against a good team as well, who've earned a lot of deserved reviews. We'll talk about the controversy in a moment, but first of all, the performance from a psychological perspective, Paul, someone who played for United, interesting to see it unfold like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to go and do and perform like that when there's nothing there after it. When in theory, the job's over. The
Yeah,
38, it's over and done with. I must say, I was surprised. Considering what was on the line for Villa, disappointed with them. But then when you hear about their records, the Villa, along with Everton, are the team that United have beaten more than anyone else in the Premier League
yeah,
as well. So which is strange, given how Villa have been as a football club. It doesn't make any sense. But then to be a player when you're nothing, we've seen it too many times, haven't we? Where teams are 2-3 nil down at half time. They come out second half and everyone wants to praise them and big hallelujahs when they bring the game back level. But I think in certain ways, if that happens, you go great as a fact. But you need to ask questions sometimes and say, how did it get to that? What happened in the first half when there was a little bit more pressure on?
yeah,
And then when you see the players go and do that, you see what happened on Wednesday night. You've seen what's happened at home to Brentford. You've seen what's happened at home to Bournemouth. All those kind of games. You've seen Brighton at home. And you
yeah.
think to yourself, what's happened? And all of a sudden you're playing Villa and you go and do that. You just know there's a problem. And it is an individual problem with players who can't deal with it. I mean, everyone now is straight away throwing in the face, which social media allows. It's throwing in the face of Mkhitaryan's going to, if they win it, they're going to do that. Scott McTominay. It's a different place. It's completely different. But people won't let it go. It seems like people have got that bitter towards the club. They feel they want to throw something at them because the players left, and all of a sudden, they keep showing little montages, clips of this player doing something. I mean, the goal that Scott scored the other day was a good goal. It was great, but to come out and virtually say, "Oh, he should have been doing this for us," and you think to yourself, "Come on, you saw him play for long enough. You knew what was needed, and it never materialised." Scott's done well. Scott's mostly enjoying his football. He misses Manchester United, but he's mostly really enjoying being somewhere where he feels appreciated. He finds that there's not much that kind of pressure of playing virtually for Scott for his hometown team, even though he's not from Manchester, but he'd been there from right away through for a young kid. So those it's so easy to go and do that. But what we saw yesterday was players with no pressure on them, just go out there and in theory enjoy it more than what they've ever enjoyed it, knowing there's nothing else after it except a tour to the Far East, to Southeast Asia. So that's all that's left for them, and they can go and do. And trust me, they will go out there, and everyone knows how bad the seasons will be, but they will go to that Far East and they will be adored.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Doesn't matter. They will just be so happy to see Manchester United out there in the Far East. So, and my mate's son, someone who I used to work with or work for, but ended up with him with his business. I'm in a football school. His son is actually going to be playing in that game as well. So he's playing for the what they call it, ASEN. It's a select team to play. So he's playing in that game. For a team from that region. So I'm, which is, and he was here a couple of years ago. That he was at Fulham, done his apprenticeship at Fulham, and then he went to Oxford United and didn't work out. So he went back. What in theory is his home, because he's half English, half Thai.
Yeah.
And he went back to Phuket, and his life is like a superstar. When in theory he had a good chance here, and he can't wait. Said that to him a few years ago when he was a little bit within himself. He would have thought, not in a million years would it happen, but he's had a really good 2 years, and it's going to be a proud moment for him to be able to do that. I just hope that United don't get beat.
Well, you can allow him his post-season, nothing riding on it, Paul. Apparently that's when United play the best. So unfortunately for him, he's going to get a good United. Funnily enough, when you were saying that, it reminded me of Mick Duxbury, who played for United, played more times than anyone for United in the 80s, and played for England as well. And when England were playing Hong Kong, when they went to the Far East for the pre-Euro 96 games, and they played a Hong Kong Select 11. Mick was in that, which was, the Select 11s must love that. A curious thing to play against your country. I don't know, did the England players get caps for that? I'm not sure.
No.
It was a proper tour, though, wasn't it?
No, Mick couldn't have played for Hong Kong, could he, if he's played for England?
No, he couldn't. But it was a Select 11. It was the one where Gazza went, with the dentist chair and everything.
Yeah.
It was that tour. I'll have a look to see if this went down as an England.
It couldn't have been Cat's head.
If anyone's watching this, get it in the comments if you can find out if that game with England against that Hong Kong 11 in Euro 96, just before Euro 96, did it count as an official cap for the England players? I'm just intrigued to know. I should know that. I work with Mick, but it's something escaping my brain there. Go back onto United. They played quite well. After the game, Bruno had said something like him and Casemiro were in conversation afterwards, saying that they were having that conversation. They're walking around the pitch saying, words to that effect, that we just haven't turned up, and how can we play like this? How can we play well? And I do think a lot, we can talk about system. We have whole season systems and formations and approaches and abilities and stuff like that, but I do think so much of it is psychological, and and it proved it yesterday. United were so much liberated. They played with when you look and you see that kind of performance, you go, all right, there's something that can be done in this system. You can see like 3 or 4 players coming in and making a big difference. Even like Heaven playing there at that side, like we talked about him, and so he was really confident, really composed. So we were unlucky. I thought Mazraoui was really good. I thought that was Mazraoui and Ahmad on that side was opening up something really well. I'm not really a big fan of Fernandez playing deep. I think it's a bit of an emergency reaction, but he's been playing there deeper in recent weeks, and I just thought there was some really good football yesterday. Especially, I thought that's a shame as well. Like Eriksen had to go. He's had 3 years at United, which I think is a year more than what most people think he would have expected to have seen him there. But even when he comes on yesterday, like 2 or 3 really clever touches, and you think, oh, he doesn't have the engine to do it, but he's still a class footballer. And you look at it was the same when we brought him in. We thought like, he's got no engine, but he's still a class footballer. And you saw those moments. We've seen them less and less, obviously, over the 3 years. It tells you how much that difference is between the players that we've got. You would hope that like a player like Kobe would have picked something up, but he's not really. I mean, a lot of what Eriksen has got is individual genius. So like, but you just hope that players pick that up, and it doesn't seem to have been like that because it's been like football has become such an insular bubble, and we'll talk about a case in point being Garnacho a little bit later on, that the players don't tend to learn, do they? Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is my game, this is who I am, this is my skill set and my profile. Whereas back in the day when you were playing, again, but the big thing about the class of 92 is that they all seem to be like osmosis. They developed so many of the traits of the players that they were playing with, like that leadership and resilience that came from the likes of yourself and notably Eric, because he'd always talk about Eric, but that work ethic and that kind of like get on with it attitude, even the argumentative spirit which Keane carried on famously for years as well, all of those things were inherited from your team. So it's disappointing to see that. Well, maybe it's to do with the pressure of the period that there's just this element in there where the players aren't learning in the same kind of ways they used to do. I mean, Kobe's got lots of skills, but you know what I mean. You want someone to learn that cleverness, wouldn't you? You know what I mean? Like spend a few weeks with Eriksen and sort of observe his movement, what he does, because he's not doing a lot, but what he does do or what he was doing was still clever enough to say no one else is bringing that.
Yeah, in a way, I look at Kobe and I think, is he having a bit of PTSD after that season? Did he get a bit of that in the football terminology so quickly for someone so young?
Yeah, maybe.
Everything that went around, and using that. I'm not saying they're not being geography at all, because I am a fan of these, and I just don't want it to disappear for him to start doubting himself. That's the thing. That's the last thing you want to happen to such a young player. To an older player, you have to deal with it. You have to and get on with it and look at it. And excuse me, everything as it is, but not with Kobe. I mean, you want him to get through this, and he'll be better for it as a player and as a person. But when you're the way you're talking and you're looking at it, you still look at some of these players and you just wonder how much they really care, Wayne, how much they want to follow through and see players and turn around and say, "Oh, I want to be like him. I want to do that." And when I was playing, we kind of, I mean, it was something completely different to me. And I played for London teams. Everyone lived, if you're talking central London, anything from 15 to 25 miles outside of London or away from that ground.
Yeah.
Everyone was coming from everywhere. So virtually we'd get in there, we'd train together and maybe do something around the training ground, but the training grounds ain't nowhere near what they're like now. I went to the cliff and it was like kind of, this feels like home in a way. Everything was close together. Everywhere you went with a London club, we were like cuckoos. We was going around just nicking different training facilities for a certain amount of months. Couldn't really leave anything behind because it wasn't ours. Never had that security of that. And then going to United and having security on the big gates, security at the front of the dressing room as such. Just Mancunian men who loved their football club, would do anything for the club, for the players. And that was all there. It was that feeling. But I just look at it today, it's not there anymore. The game at that level is not allowing that at certain clubs. And I don't think it's been allowed at Manchester United at this moment. That's why everyone virtually there's a lot of individuals there, and I believe, and what I've read a lot of, and I have, it's unlike me, I have done quite a bit about the manager because I like him, and I've seen I've read some of the things how he likes things to happen when he's managing a football club, and I like it because it reminds me of what it was like when I was at Manchester United. He wants the integration of the players. He wants the players to socialise together and do stuff, and that's what I've done. And what I was saying earlier about living away from London, when I went to United, we all lived within a certain area, so we could drive to each other's houses. Not that we'd done that, but when we went into the cliff, it was suddenly said, "Oh, we're going to go out and have a social." Not many said no, because Robbo said it. But we went together, we socialised together. There was a penance to pay if you left too early. But we did all that, and it was easy. And all that doesn't matter what level of football you are, where you are in a league. That bit somewhere will come through and help you. If you're a team that you're in somewhere and you're struggling a little bit, or a team that's mid-table, you're comfortable, you're chasing titles and stuff, those little bits of getting together will help you on the pitch, because you'll look at that person, you're going through certain bits in life together, or that time on the training field, and you're bonded and you would help each other. I really don't think it's there because of different managers, different players, and all of a sudden players start bitching together about systems, and they're making it. The problem is, Wayne, is that we're making football so difficult. When it's a sport, when it's football, we're just adding so much into it, and we're putting so much in players' heads, and maybe in a way because football has become a middle-class sport now, where before it was 100% a working-class sport, they suddenly feel they can educate them more. But as we said before, there's still a lot of people out there who can't take so much in at one time and deliver. They need little bits. They don't, some don't need that. Some are just natural. But as far as I'm concerned, when I was playing and players around, if you didn't have any initiative, you're not a footballer. You had to be able to think for yourself. I wonder how many players are being allowed to think for themselves in what they do. We see Matty Cash, we see the goal, for the sending off. His first thought when he got the ball was to go backwards, when he could have gone forwards. What makes you do that? Because if I'd have done that, someone had given me the ball from where he got it, and I'd have been looking to go backwards to Brucey from somewhere where I had something in front of me where I could have and should have been positive, or go all the way back to Big Pete, I would have, especially on that side, I would have taken an earful, if not from my teammate, from the manager. I would have got an earful from the goalkeeper, because why am I putting my goalkeeper? Why am I going backwards so far when you're in a positive position to go? So that's the worrying thing. So when you hear that, when you read, or people are writing, the players are unhappy playing this way in the system, yet we want to call them, as the media pull it, by the way, because all of a sudden the media are calling everyone who plays in the Premier League an elite player. And I thought elite was something quite small. That's what the word kind of means. Not a great big fishbowl of people. If you're elite, that means you're adaptable in certain ways. If you're elite, that means that you're focused. You can't use that word with football. And that's me saying it. Someone, not the cleverest, but I just kind of understand that there was certain, and elite is the wrong word to use, in my opinion, for footballers. It's not that word you use. There's better words you can to describe what footballers are aiming to be. But you can say players are aiming to be elite, but you're not saying they are elite. It's absolutely ridiculous what's going on at the moment with that. So players, if they want to use that word, they should be able to deliver. Now, if suddenly now that they were and do something stupid and get rid of the manager, he's going to come in and he's going to go to a 4 at the back. And then what are you going to do then? Are you still going to think, these players are going to be happy and they can go and deliver? You're going to say to yourself, oh, no, of course not, because we've seen it before. And then you'd look at, and you're looking at the ones who've been there the shortest time. But even then, that still wouldn't be good enough to go to that bit, because they allow the manager to get what he wants. Manchester United can make a big, big jump in this league, the way the league is now and what it was before. It's so easy now. It's not a 5-6 year project or whatever they call it with Manchester United or teams who are aiming to win the league. For Manchester United and Spurs next season, it's quite easy to make up that deficit.
Yeah.
Quite easy if United are allowed to do what they want and Tottenham make up their mind what they're going to do next season.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think you're definitely right on that. I think sometimes you look at it and you say United are a million miles away because they're lucky in some respects. There were three worst teams in the division, but then you look at the three top teams in the division, who are Liverpool, Arsenal, and City. You say, all right, United are a couple of years off them. But there's nothing saying that they're not as good as any of them next season if they get the recruitment right. I mean, anyone other than the top three, because the gaps, it's just a poor league, and I think that's a frustration when you see United, and especially like they were yesterday. You say, all right, they're thereabouts. They've got some of the players. I think everything you just said there is completely spot on. I want to talk about a couple of the events before we talk about Wednesday's final. First of all, your point on backing the manager, we've had a little bit of discourse on this pod over the last sort of couple of weeks where we've talked about the merits of Amorim and how much culpability he takes for the underperformance and everything like that. And like we lost on Wednesdays, we'll talk about in a moment. And he came out yesterday and he said what he said after the game. The good moments are coming, which obviously he's bound to do. He can't say that more bad times are coming because that would not be a very wise thing to do. But this all came on the back of also something else we'll talk about in a little bit. Garnacho, him saying in front of the squad that Garnacho will be finding a new club and everything like that. I don't know why, because my instant reaction was not a positive one. I don't think it's a particularly good thing to do some of those kind of things. But then I think, well, no. Do you know what? Maybe it's just the hope of a football fan because we've already got a clean page now. What's happened has happened, and next season is a new hope. And then you just hope that the things that we've been through have tangible benefit. And anyone who listens to me on this podcast or has listened to anything that I've done in fan media for a long time knows that I'll just bite the manager sometimes until after it's long gone wrong. But now immediately I'm like, all right, well, he's got the benefit of this turbulent spell. You've got to see him through it and see what he can do on the other side of it, because we've seen too many times with managers that they've not been able to do that. Much of it rests on the capability to back him over the window. We don't know if he's going to be able to if the club can do that as a result of what happened on Wednesday. But we'll talk about that in a moment. Just the final things from yesterday. The first of all is the red card. Very quick one to clear up this one, isn't it, Paul? The BT Sports commentators were kind of like they're playing the double jeopardy rule, like saying, "Oh, there's a man covering and everything like that." But it's like that's not what this is about. First of all, he's out of his goal anyway; he's out of his area, so it's a foul on its own merits. Second is that's a Pedro Mendes on Ben Thatcher. If you watch that replay, he's not. He's properly gone to clean him out. It's a red card. I mean, there's no. You're looking at that. You're saying it's a definite red, like instantly, right? You're not thinking, looking at the angle and then thinking, let's say, even if Højlund gets there, he might not score because it's Højlund. All those things aside, just the collision, the intent, it's a definite red, right?
The thing about it, though, if we're seeing, I'm trying to think the sending off at Bournemouth, the sending off of Everson. Yeah. Was it Evan Nielsen? Yeah, the sending off there. And they're trying to say there was the way lifted initially, saying there was intense. And that's what they're virtually saying, the studs are up and whatever. You think, okay. And you look at that and that got overturned. And there's been those ones we've seen Miles Skelly, we've seen that one, and he got sent off as well. And then you're looking at that one, and it's not about he's lifting his foot with intent to go in there. He's actually using his body, which is, that's powerful. He's a powerful man. Yeah. And then you see him do that, and he knew exactly what he was doing. He couldn't. He was looking just to do that. And I don't. They talk about they're trying to use that. It's a sending off. There's no other way around it. They can't suddenly just turn and say, "Oh no." I mean, that's a sending off. It's a shame, really, because it seems like he's leaving Villa. But it was a sending off of what he'd done. Initially, I'm kind of looking for any reason to question VAR, but you look at that and you can just look. It's obvious if you look at the player, you look at his face, you look and you can see the intention. And given everything, he should have maybe, and how the season's gone, should have used his brain a little bit better and and say, because you know what I'm going to say, let him have a go.
Yeah.
Let Hoyland have a go.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
And the
And
way
he's
that
been quite selfish as well, because the other player was around and he would have affected him to force him more towards that side angles. So
yeah, and Martinez is one of those mindful tricky goalkeepers who will try and play with you like mentally to make you make the mistake. So I just lost his head in that moment in time, and it was one of those that made me think, because obviously it's because he's the goalkeeper and he's out as well. That adds to it and gives it that instant red feel impact. But also, it did make me think, if that's just a normal player if a normal defender going in on him, and it's a block, perceived as a block, it still looked dangerous enough for a red card for me, because the speed in which he went in to wipe him out is only happening with that emergency because he's a goalkeeper. I get that. But if that's happening with that speed from any other player, you'd be looking at a red as well, because it was so dangerous. They've probably
got a big gap in between them as well. There was a lot of ground made up. It wasn't as if it's happened in a short space. It was so there was a lot of thinking time in that as well.
Yeah. That's it. It was so premeditated, and right. Replays tell their own story. He's looking directly at the player, looking to go into his path, which isn't even that's not even eyes on the ball. It's like eyes are in the path of the player. Because Rasmus is going one way to get the ball, and he's gone, no, you're not going to get it. Well, they've probably got more of a complaint on the second incident that happened with our goalkeeper in the second half, which, when it happened, I started laughing, because I thought, this is how typical is this of United to have played so well, to be deservedly, should be 4 goals up. It's still 0-0 against 10 men, and then they go and score a goal like that. I didn't have any complaint over what happened when the ball went in. However, the first thing I thought was, well, it felt like the whistle went. So when they replayed it and the whistle went, before he's kicked the ball in, well, that's the end of the matter. It's the end of the matter, because the referee's got it wrong, fair enough, but he's blown the whistle. So it doesn't really matter what happens from that point. They can't go back. There's no point. You cannot go back, because the rules of the game won't allow it. So I felt a bit cheekily relieved, like when Pedro Mendes. Not very often Pedro Mendes is going to get 2 shout-outs in a Manchester United podcast in 2025. But I'm thinking the guilty relief that you had when Mendes scored for Spurs from the halfway line, when Roy Carroll, I've joked to Roy personally about his super save, where he somehow pulls it from over the line. Great save that, Roy, if you're listening, that you are. But anyway, back to that moment. So he's obviously kicked it in after, but the whistle's already gone, so it's not a disallowed goal. And then all the smart Alex on Twitter were pulling up the rules and the IFAB regulations, which are basically to do with if a goalkeeper's got the block on the ball, even if it doesn't have to be between his hands, it can be his hands and the surface, or the ball can be between his hands but not touching his hands. That's when you look at the regulation, that's ambiguous. It says between hands, but it doesn't say that one's holding them. So there's even the ambiguity there of it couldn't have countered with that. I mean, that's for a different. I thought in real time it wasn't a foul. I thought it's fine. He should have been allowed to play on and score. But the fact of the matter is the whistle went anyway. So Villa have put in this complaint after to the Premier League, which I can understand. It's a very emotional thing to do, and it's a decision that potentially cost them £100 million. Look, we know the Payne brothers. We had that last week. We've had that, and we didn't have a decision to blame. It's very emotionally difficult to take. Where do you stand on that? I mean, look, it's almost like there's a bit of a consequential thing from what happened with the Forest lad, right? Because there's been a secondary discourse with VAR throughout the season, and allowing referees to play on. And there's been a bite back over this over the last few weeks, because it's well, you've got to stop the play, or so at some point you've got to stop the play. You can't just let it keep running, because you might have an incident like you did with the Forest player or other players who've been injured. Because I think that's happened to us a couple of times this season as well, where players just gone on and we've ended up with a player going injured, and they've had significant spells out because of a referee just delaying the decision. So I'm not saying that played into his mind. Yeah, I just think he got the wrong call, but he's blown the whistle. and that's it. That's the end of the matter. So they can't. Villa have complained saying they've disallowed the goal. They haven't disallowed the goal. Sorry to be pedantic, anyone listening, and I said this straight away. They haven't disallowed the goal. The whistle stopped the play. He's kicked the ball in after. So that, and he should have been allowed to score. He shouldn't have stood. You're right to complain, but Villa complaining that they've had a disallowed goal is factually incorrect. So if you're basing a complaint on that, they're going to throw it out because he didn't score a disallowed goal. Where do you stand on that? He's very emotional, right? And you can understand that because there's so much financial pressure on it. We're talking about different kinds of pressure. This is a reaction to that. What did you make of it? Because I mean, it's just, if anything sums up this Premier League, first of all, it's been an horrendous season in terms of quality. It's been quite high on entertainment in some respects because some of the teams have come out and played. And it seems like it's moving into that place of competitiveness again. But the underlying thing has been how horrendous the officiating has been and how terrible the adaptation of VAR has been this season. And that's just a classic example, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. But just what you're saying there, the one thing that is needed is you're talking about competitiveness. It's coming to it on a few occasions, but not enough because of the people reffing the game. They don't allow any contact. They're allowing people to cheat.
Yeah.
And we saw that. Was it the dive of is it Gravenberch, Liverpool?
Yeah.
We done an incredible dive yesterday. Absolutely incredible. If you can see it, be honest, if you had a 5-year-old kid and they dive like that into a swimming pool, you'd actually want to say you need some lessons. It was that bad. It was a terrible, but he got booked. He got booked for it. You think yourself, great, but how comes that doesn't happen more than, maybe because it was in the box. I don't know, but still, it should be everywhere in the park. But I look at that one, and the goalkeeper, you look at the position he took when he's getting the ball, everything was perfect because the ball was never going to go through his leg. The only thing he had to do is put two hands on the ball, and he didn't because I think Rodgers come in, and Rodgers goes in quite tentatively as if to say, I'm just going to stab a toe at this. Yeah. And all of a sudden, he's got to stab a toe, and he's realised the keeper hasn't put his hands on the ball. So he's virtually had a little kick at the ball, and there's a wobble, and it flicks out. How the referee could see that from a distance? The referee has taken a punt.
Yeah.
Literally taken a punt saying, he must have kicked it out of his hands. The referee can't do that. He has to, in theory, be 100% sure. And he wasn't 100% sure. He couldn't have been. But maybe the position, there was no way he could have seen that the goalkeeper had that ball. And everyone knows that the keeper never had that ball. He didn't. It was like he was like virtually doing that with it. Obviously a lot slower. But so the referee should have waited and seen the outcome. And when you know you've got that safety net of people in a broom cupboard by Heathrow Airport, you should just turn around and say, you just go, not my problem, your job, lad. It's so easy just to go, get on with it.
Yeah.
In that way, let them get on with it. Because in theory, we don't need assistant referees anymore. They're just flag bearers. They're not there with it. That's something where the assistant referee maybe could have helped him, but they don't allow assistant referees to speak, to have communication. All they're there for really is to be knocked over by players, or maybe sometimes go and get the ball from the ball boy to hand to the player. That's all they're good for. So I just think that it was a massive mistake. It was a fortunate mistake at that given time because mentally, if that was allowed to go on and United go behind, it could have been a different atmosphere around the grounds.
Yeah, it's interesting to me as well. One of the things, I'm not quite sure, but it felt like we made substitutes at 4 different points yesterday rather than 3. And I'm not sure if one of them was allowed because of an injury, but I thought that it was only down to head injuries as well. I'm trying to pull up the thing so I can have a look at the report and see if it's in there. But it seemed to me, because we had the injuries in the first half, I felt like we'd... Anyway, I thought it was funny. I thought it's funny that they made the complaint afterwards. It was funny in terms of like, this is typical us, like that. But then, they're not going to get anywhere with the complaint. United sacked a manager this season based on one of the worst decisions that happened down at West Ham. Ten Hag deserved to go at that point, sure, that's fine. But it still happened on the back of one of the worst decisions that we've seen. So we benefited from some dodgy ones as well. I don't think yesterday United win the attendance said they were going to lose that game. Villa, well, maybe not from that point. Maybe United's ability to play against 10 men has been called into question. Anyway, that's it. Villa are not in the Champions League because of that, and United, well, because of losing, and United are also not in the Champions League because of what happened last Wednesday night against Spurs. So let's get into this. Amrin had said beforehand that, all right, we're playing a Premier League opponent, and it kind of sort of set the scene for a Premier League kind of performance. And that's exactly what we got. It's not been the games that we've seen in the Europa League. I think that we tried to be patient. I almost felt beforehand the way that they built it up is a tale of two managers who refused to budge from philosophy. So if one did, they'd get the rewards, basically. And I think that's what has been suggested afterwards, with Ange sort of tweaking it a little bit and coming away with the win, like knowing how to play against this United side and really frustrating them, because once Spurs took the lead, United, they had chances in the second half, and they eventually did make a couple of breakthroughs, but I think Spurs got a bit anxious towards the end just because of what it was. I don't think there was anything in there that ever said that United's quality was going to tell. I think that was the big infuriating point of the second half, is that you knew that United were just not going to get back into it. There was just until Amrin himself made drastic changes, and by then, at that point, you know what I mean. You're looking at that thinking, can I afford to take Højlund off, or blah blah blah, all those kind of things, and the decisions that he was making. Turns out that he, probably did wait a little bit too late to make the changes. The bringing on Garnacho seems to have the biggest impact, but still not enough to bring us back into the game. And really, everything came down to conceding one of the worst goals you're going to see United concede in a final. I'm scratching my brain to think of a worse one that was absolutely terrible to concede. And, the worst kind of, I was talking about this with Dave, who, hello, Dave, decided again to not grace us with his presence, although I will let him off considering he was on the Ryanair flight that got back at 2 a.m. last night or something. So he'll be allowed the week off for that. I was talking about this with him, though, and I said the worst kind of goals are where there's so much blame to go around. It's like a kid going into, someone setting fire to something in the kitchen, and there's 3 kids there, but someone's gone in and done it, and everyone's got the chance to put it out, but you just let it burn the house down. That's kind of like what some goals that United are conceding are like that. It's like you're not quite sure who to blame because people stand off and they don't take the responsibility for it. You could blame Maguire for missing the first one, whatever Shaw's doing, whatever he's doing, and then whatever Onana's doing, all 3 of them. You're looking at them saying, one of you could have done something, and all of you have combined to that's. If you're going to say that something deserved, something sums up the way that United have played this season, and something really sums up this season, that's probably the goal, and really, in a sense, deserved to influence what happened in the game. We'll talk about the game itself, but what did you make of the goal?
Well, the goal start. To be honest, you can pick holes from where it started from. It started from Bruno trying a longer Hollywood pass that gets headed back, I think, by Van der Ven. And then he gets the ball again around the halfway line, and he's running forward at an angle towards it from right to left at an angle. He decides as he's running at an angle to go pass it backwards. It gets cut out, I think, by Basuma, and that's where it starts from. They get easily along on that defending right-hand side to the byline, far too easy. And then the ball back, Harry Maguire doesn't do enough. Luke Shaw, as you would expect, is asleep. He's just not, he's not tuned into a game, shouldn't really be playing. And the goalkeeper's just been consistent in letting things go through his fingers, to be perfectly honest. He's flapped. He's actually dived almost when the ball's in the net. He's dived late. It was again, and I will say this, I've said it 1,000 times, I must have said it on here. I don't believe he's been a goalkeeper all his life.
Yeah.
I think he was an outfield player who they brought back to say you've got good feet, you're good, good striker of the ball, you can be in goal, because he shows nothing, no attributes for me that being a goalkeeper is in his blood. There's nothing instinctive in what he does. The way he dives, everything is backwards. His positions when balls go across the front of the goal, you can see him. He's just there looking at things. I'm no expert, but I'm lucky enough I can talk about two great goalkeepers I played with. And goalkeepers are coming off and they're snatching things off of you because they see it. They know their position, their body shape. And there's two goalkeeping coaches at United, and I've seen two of them warming up the players, and I think to myself, they know that. They know it's not a natural goalkeeper. It's just nothing there. In goalkeepers, you have to be natural. You have to have something. You can't just suddenly make a goalkeeper. I don't think you can. I think you could make a footballer, an outfield player, athlete first, and then try and introduce the football. But goalkeeper is something in there. There's something here that makes you a goalkeeper. He's not a natural goalkeeper, and that's been shown, especially this year. And since Almarin, since his tenure started, I think we've seen far too many mistakes now, which a goalkeeper of any sorts wouldn't make. And starting positions from crosses, goal from corners, so poor.
Yeah, I think one of the things we said maybe 6 or 7 weeks ago was you persist with this goalkeeper and you persist with Højlund and Xerxes, to be fair, as well. Those decisions can cost you your job because you've got a goalkeeper who can't keep goals out and you've got strikers who can't score. And I think that was a massive fear going into the game was, this is going to cost, eventually at some point, it's gonna hurt us. Even, I'm not saying it wasn't the same kind of goal that we conceded at Chelsea, but you look at it and you just think there was something there that doesn't inspire confidence, and certainly, going forward, we weren't doing that either, and maybe says something for why those players were missing yesterday. But we'll talk about that in a second. Just on the performance itself, Paul, because we did come back. We had that chance in the second half. Højlund cleared off the line. Garnacho had a moment into the side net. I think Casemiro went for an overhead kick, but everything was a bit hit and hope. There was nothing really there that was functional. Saying, like I said, I think Spurs were defending the occasion rather than getting spooked by what we were doing. What did you make of? I mean, obviously the manager as well has got to take some criticism for that selection, because he, can't be saying he's got it right, because I think those selections have ended up costing us. Also, probably impacted as well because what's Shaw, right? I mean, would he be first choice? Would he be second choice? Would he be third choice? I mean, Martinez would have been first choice. Euro, he would have liked to have played out there if everyone else had been fit and Martinez wasn't. He liked to play Euro there and play Delete on the other side. That wasn't working out. Then he's wanted Heaven there in the running. You could have said that if Heaven hadn't got the ankle knock, that he would have been in there. And all of these choices in front of Shaw. So I'm saying that he deserves some of the criticism for the selection as well. So where did you stand with that? Do you think he got it wrong?
Yeah, and which is easy to say. I mean, Mason Mount starting is the one that really did get kind of. I didn't really understand that because, he just hasn't done anything this season. People have been trying their best to keep saying about, he works in his system, he fits it. I'm using that word system. What am I doing? It's football, not machinery. He fits into that formation, and I'm saying to myself, how? How does he fit in now? Because I haven't seen anything that says to me that he does. He's not a runner of the ball. If you're Mason Mount and his big strength coming an 18-month period for Chelsea when he was like a modern day David Platt, he's making those long runs into the box. That was his strength, and he's not doing that anymore. And he's trying to be a ball player, and he's not a ball player. We're actually seeing the form of Mason Mount when he plays for United on what he was doing for Chelsea, and the Chelsea fans had enough of him. To be perfectly honest, because the massive drop hasn't helped him. He's just really gone off, and then been out for so long. When he comes back, he seems to get a run when he doesn't deliver. So I just think that was the one that stuck out for me. Luke Shaw shouldn't have been on the field, given everything else that's gone on. I don't think he was ready. You look at him, still his body shape. You would look at the way he plays. He's playing within himself. He doesn't. Excuse me, God, horrible. kick off, and he doesn't want to stretch himself too far. Where before, Luke Shaw of old, you was getting lung busting runs. You was getting someone who went from people talking about he's had no assist and all this rubbish to someone who couldn't get forward enough times, who went back and was quite powerful in the way he went back. He wanted to get back, but we're not seeing that anymore. He's playing right in between, so he doesn't have to push too far forward to chase back. So you've got a left-sided centre half in a free that's not willing to step out and play. You've got a big problem. If you look at it, when he's played it, Maguire and him don't suit playing free at the back because they can't step in. They won't step in because they're worried about pace. They're worried the fact of recovery runs. More Shaw can actually go into midfield and play a bit. Harry Maguire can't, and you need that. You need that centre one to really, in theory, might have. You look at it, be a midfield player who stepped back into a centre half role and can just. And Harry Maguire can't do that. He can try and ping a 60-yard ball, but it's not the way the manager really wants to play. It's not really what he's looking at in that sense. And it was just so unbalanced. And I always had that feeling that if United had been playing a European side, I think there was only going to be one winner. The moment they were playing against another English side, a Premier League side, I just think legs are always going to be the issue. Always going to be the issue. And the fact of Tottenham players suddenly just come out of the show and they showed a little bit of fight, which they hadn't been doing. And we saw that again with Tottenham yesterday, to get beaten at home by Brighton like that. So it just tells you both sides have got incredible issues. And I look at Tottenham, and I think Tottenham's one is, yes, you can look at certain players, but not as many players as there are with Manchester United. Because United's issue has been building and building and building. And I jumped the gun, but I don't want to hear about new grounds being built and all that. I want to see them at the focal point of any football club getting sorted out. And that's what happens on the grass. They need the grass to get sorted out. So, don't try and sell stadiums to people. We're going to do this. Because I know that the stadium they're going to build is not going to be a football stadium. It won't be a football stadium. The way everything about it says it's going to be a venue. And once it becomes a venue, does that take the football forward? No, it doesn't. Not in the short term, definitely.
No, well, it's a long way off that, especially after failure on Wednesday night, because it sets the club back indeterminably. We don't know how far it's going to set them back, but if they can't, obviously a second wave of staff got let go last week. There's no guarantee that another one won't be now because of the cost of what's happened. It's going to impact the summer transfer plans. Already, you can see that it's been accelerated in talk of outgoings as well. A lot of big cuts have already been made in terms of the playing staff. So a lot to pick through. Luke Shaw's an interesting one. He was devastated after the game. I was speaking to Andy Mitten. Andy did an interview with him in the tunnel, and Shaw looked, and to be fair, he did look genuinely devastated. But talking about a player here who last played 40 games in a season 2 years ago. So in Ten Hag's first season, he played 47 games. But in the other seasons that he's played for United, I'm just picking, so there's 11 seasons, 1, 2, 3, 4 times he's played over 30 games, and the others like 27, some 8, 19, 15, 12. It's just, it's like Phil Jones, it's not all his fault, but if he's an injury-prone player and you can't, it's like the same conversation we're going to be having with Martinez when he comes back. It's going to be like, can we afford to really rely on him, or do we say to Martinez, you're the backup now? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're injured, you're injured. Before, there was enough potential in there to build around him. I fear that we'll probably start with him, but I just wouldn't at this point, because I don't think his form has been good enough to justify it as well, because you're investing hope in his potential, and that's what he's always been with Luke Shaw as well. We never saw him hit what we thought he could do. Even when he was at his best, it was kind of like, all right, if he's had a good season, it was always hopefully he'll kick on to the next season and add something to his game, and then he would invariably suffer injury problems. A few of those, like Shaw was dropped from the squad yesterday, so was Onana. Garnacho we'll talk about in a second. Do you think that there's anything big to take from that, considering Onana and Shaw going on this post-season jolly? Do you think there's something big to take from the fact that both of them were dropped from yesterday's game?
I'm always sceptical now. Whatever I read and hear from anybody, to be perfect. There's a few that always, through a few people who put stuff out there, I kind of go, oh, I wonder. But a lot of it now, everyone's a journalist, everyone's a coach, everyone's a doctor, everyone's a physio now. They all know what everything's correct to do. So no, I don't trust what anyone says really. And at the end of it, you're reading about Onana. He wants UCL football. You think to yourself, you're lucky that you're getting football where you're getting it. You should be a lot lower. All this playing the Champions League as if they're trying to make out this glamour competition that every player wants to be in. If he's got anything about him, he should want to be at the football club because what it is and what it can be. And if he was better at his job, then he could maybe be the start of something. So I understand if they're going by saying what the manager said, to find a club. I think with Luke Shaw, I can see them in heaven. Everyone wanted to see him again to see if there's still something there with him. He's had his injury, and he's come back and he looked good. He looked fine. He looked capable. Definitely the lad doesn't struggle with confidence or belief in his own ability. And you look at it again.
One really good moment, Paul, wasn't in the second half. One really good moment where they put the ball through. It was first half. They put the ball through and he sort of come between two defenders. Then he gave the player offside in the end, but he recovered against two of them. He came out with the ball, which was a showcase of his confidence.
Yeah, and I think in a certain way, if he didn't get that injury, which I initially thought was going to be very serious, I think he would have played. I think he would have played a lot more games.
Yeah,
a lot more games. And I always, when I see it, Euro for me is somebody who could maybe play in the middle rather than play in a wide position because he seems very capable with the ball when he goes. And I think he'd be more capable if he was in the middle rather than being in one of the wide three, in my opinion. And that Heaven could play the other side because we know when you look at that position, it's comfort in the ball and it's about pace as well and sensing danger, seeing it. And when you look at it and you look at sensing danger, the first player always comes into my mind in that role is De Ligt.
Yeah.
De Ligt is maybe the out and out of what we've seen most of this, one of the ones who played the most of the games as a defender in that way. And he did it for Ajax. He's played in the semi-final for Ajax. I think he played in the final against United. Did De Ligt play in that? Or was that too early for it? Yeah.
No, it was.
So it's incredible in spirits he's got. And every time I watched him, how many blocks he makes is incredible. Yeah. So there is, when you look at it again, there's what United can move on, but I don't know how far they can move on this summer because you've got players who are sitting there and they don't fit in, but they're just going to sit there today. Have they got enough about themselves, enough, I don't know, there's a word I'm looking for, to turn around and say, ain't working out, I want to go somewhere, I want to play regularly, and I just want to go and enjoy my football. I don't need this, what's going on. And I don't know. I really don't know if some players are going to do that. And the manager needs it because the hardest thing, though, is how they're going to pay off these players if they do say they want them to go because they're going to want every single penny so they can save face by telling people.
Yeah.
Because that's what you do. That is what you do, Wayne. You're not going to say, it's because of this and because of that. You're going to want every penny to justify that to your friends or to your family or peers, just to say that. So that's a hard job for the man. It'll be a frustrating job. And it could be the fact of, we ain't got players who are willing to walk. Then he might just say, I can't do this job and mentally I can't go through doing it again. And who would blame him if it was going to be that way? I don't think any fan would blame him for doing that. And I think that would just show up the club so much if that was to happen. But he needs help. He needs the club to help him. Monetary-wise, he needs help. Somebody to pick up the pieces, the shortfall of people's contracts so we can start with more hungrier players who want to prove a point playing for the biggest club in the world.
There was the talk in the Athletic did a big piece on him yesterday. They were saying that he threatened to walk twice this season. Once after the defeat to Brighton. Just very quickly before we go on Garnacho, because Garnacho's a complicated one for me. And I've got a feeling that you'll probably say that it's time for him to go. But the concern I have isn't so much that, and Garnacho's an individual case because obviously after the final he came out and he complained, and his brother posts on social media, blah blah blah. But there is still a part of me that, first of all, I'm worried about how that gets dressed up in the reaction of losing the Europa final. So you're losing the Europa final. You're told it's a 100 million black hole for United, potentially up to £150 million, depending on how seriously you want to take some of the more doom-mongering reports. But certainly between the region of 80 to £110 million United will physically lose out of. So then you say, all right, well, the cynic in you would say that they're going to raise money through trading on the club's assets, which is the youth, and obviously that's something that it should be done anyway because that's what it's there for. But then the thing that sticks in your throat is doing it with the more talented players that we've got. So like a Kobe or a Garnacho, who are the elite talent that we've got from the academy, who are currently in the first team, and they represent pure profit on that PSR regulations and all that sort of stuff. So there's the cynic in me that goes, you were going to sell him Garnacho in January based on the fact that he wasn't fitting into the system. But then he came in and he did fit into the system, and he's at least created a few chances and scored a few goals. He hasn't been brilliant, but he's done what you asked of him. He's reacted petulantly. There's a fine line between Ferguson tolerating a petulant kid, like accommodating them and saying, all right, you've got to kick your attitude here and develop, or getting rid of them altogether. We've seen both examples of that. So it's not really, right, traditionally what Ferguson would do, or even Busby would do back in the day. The point is, you've got a bit of a messy teenager here, or not teenager anymore, messy kid. Just one example. My concern is that this is more of a running theme that will happen with the club's underperformance. Like next year, it'll be Kobe, and a different example will come up. So, like say, Kobe's not, Kobe's complaining about a contract, so it's time to move him on, that kind of thing. You can create problems by not fixing them. You know what I mean? That you saw Garnacho without any shadow of a doubt, he's definitely tried to apply himself into that system. So you can't say that, or formation. Sorry, I know you don't like system there. But you've seen that he's tried to do that. He's tried to play in that role, and he's actually done quite well. So he's tried to accommodate himself. He's tried to adapt. He hasn't been brilliant, but that's part of the development of a player. And I think that if you don't start him in the final, you've got a bit of a hot-headed reaction. I'm not saying he should have done it. He's obviously cost him massively. Is it enough to cost him his place at the club? Do you know? I feel like it should not. To as it was reportedly done on Saturday, he told Garnacho in front of everyone to find a new club, which is not. That doesn't strike me as a strong management. I don't think that's the good response. This is my concern: is that he gets dressed up as like a player with ill discipline who you've got to move on because he's a bad egg. Which he might well be. I just worry that that's an excuse made, like they'll go down the line, like said next year with Kobe. Oh, well, he's not signing new contracts, blah, 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 so we want to get rid of him. When the reality is that you wouldn't be having this conversation if the club weren't failing on the pitch. If the debt's not hanging around the club, are we making these kind of decisions? I'm just not sure. Where do you stand on that? Because he's the golden goose in terms of if you're not going to sell Fernandes for 90 million or whatever it is, the golden goose for bringing in money is Garnacho, and I feel like it's more of a convenient thing for me. I don't know where do you.
I think yes, it is a more convenient thing, but I think it's a necessary one. Maybe for his career as well. I think it's necessary. Go somewhere else and find out about real life. Really, to be honest, go somewhere where your reputation is going to follow you. Everyone's going to be waiting for it. The fans, the manager. Is it going to be the manager who buys him, or is it going to be these directors of football? And I'd rather it be the manager because that means then that he really wants you. And then the most important thing, those players who are in the dressing with you, they've seen you. They might have played against you. They know exactly what you're like. What have you been saying to players of other teams when you've been taken off? How have you been talking? They've seen the way you talk back to the manager. All those things have gone against him. Personally, he has to go. This happened far too often, Wayne. far too often. You can't do it. The manager needs to get hold of it and be allowed to control the dressing room. And there was a great thing yesterday, which I was just looking for, and it was just Sir Alex what he put out, what he said ages ago back in 2013 about changing managers, 2018, sorry, about changing managers and all that, and what it allows players to get stronger if there's constant changes of managers all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that's exactly what has happened. And he thinks he's bigger than this present manager. So he needs to go somewhere else to prove to himself, and then maybe come back and stick his tongue at the football club. Maybe go and look out. Look at all these managers, the ones who never gave him what he wants. But he's got to remember, he never really gave them what he wanted, to be perfectly honest, and that was to be a team player, because that's the thing that will go against him most, is that everybody knows that he plays for himself. His reaction, every time he missed a chance goes by, keeper makes saves, and it's all about he's doing his bit after. It's like he's trying to get a patent for FIFA by his reaction to everything. And to be honest, there's a better word than frustrates me, but I don't think I could say it really on here, but I just think you just let him go. He's not a team person. He doesn't deserve to be where he is. You can't go around telling people what he should be doing. Oh, I played in all these games, I should be playing in the final. No, that's not reaction. That's taking the mick out, virtually taking the mick out one of your teammates, to be honest. Saying I'm better than you, something you should never do. You can think it as much as you want, never comes out there.
Yeah. Too late for him now. He'll be gone.
Yeah.
Which is, for me, feel a little bit disappointed that, because I think he's got a high ceiling. I think like McTominay, but for different reasons, because I think there's a player in there that can prove value in terms of what we don't have that he can provide. I think that he'll go on to do well. Probably someone who does indulge him a little bit more. And it'll come back as something that United regret doing. But I see your point. I do agree that on an individual basis, it has happened so often. And he's obviously a leak in terms of where bad news comes from, because it's come out through his brother, who's posted quite happily on socials with stuff. You know what I mean? So those kind of things you can do without. I just thought, like, strong management sometimes. Strong management is leading an example and saying we're not tolerating that. But sometimes this doesn't carry on. We'll give you one last chance. Do you know what I mean? I feel like too often over the last few years, it's been the hard line of like, well, time for you to go. Do you know what I mean? How many players can you make an example of? And really, how many players have we made an example of? Because I can see what you're saying. Like move Garnacho on. I wasn't going to say Greenwood. I was going to say Garnacho. But the other thing is that Sancho and Rashford are still coming back. They can't give him away. Well, can't give Sancho away. They're paying to send him back almost. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is that from the point of view where you want to get rid of an issue, I completely get that with Garnacho, but I still feel like the issue is going to remain with these two players. A lot remains to be seen on, because surely they're going to be moved on as well, Sancho and Rashford. You would have thought so, right? For the same reason.
Yeah, but whoever wants them, that's the problem. And whoever wants them is not going to pay good money for them, because they know they're not wanted, to be perfect honest. And Sancho has proved now for 3 different clubs that he's a problem. Even Dortmund don't want him back. They're trying to push him now to Leverkusen. I've seen as well been going about. So people are pushing him around. For him, that must be hurting him, mustn't it? That he's not wanted. It can't be any worse feeling ever that you're not wanted. But I thought he was on the pitch for Chelsea yesterday, I'm sure. So I think he's wearing 19. So I thought I saw the number. So I don't know if it was a sub or whatever. But he's still getting the odd games, even though Chelsea have got a catalogue of players. So I don't know. We've seen that Anthony, they're desperate for him to stay there. I think they'll end up taking him on loan again in that sense. And he's gone out and done himself justice. And that's maybe some of you where you go and have a look at. It suits him out there where he's playing in Spain. Everything suits him. Maybe Garnacho needs that. Go somewhere else. But he's going to have to change his attitude. Has to change, because no manager is going to stand for that from him now. And he'll be told that. He'll be told that he'll have to, if he wants to come and play for any club, any of that, and there'll be a clause in his contract. Without a doubt, they'll put a clause about family members putting stuff on there. Anything they see of doubt in social media, that will put him under more pressure because they might go under a different name, whoever does it, trying to get around it. But to make it, trying to make a family member better than what he really is, because that's what he is. He is still potential, even at his age. He is still potential because he hasn't really proven it on a consistent basis. The moment he does anything good, he suddenly wants to walk around and not run. Maybe he needs to learn about what's best for his game. He's not a dribbler. He's not a dribbler with the ball. Gets the ball taken off him far too easy, and then when he gets taken off of him, doesn't try and get it back. So tell me what you are. Are you going to be a 1 and 2 touch player, quick passes? If you're going to do that, not a problem. But if you think you can dribble past people, no, that's not your strength.
Easier to predict what he won't be, which is a Manchester United player at the end of the summer. Yeah. So I guess we'll probably be taking a couple of weeks off because there's no football to talk about, thank God. I'm sure Paul would love my company to talk about times gone by, and we'll pop in over the summer, of course we will. But I think everyone deserves a little bit of a break, don't they, from football? It's been a long, hard season. There'll be lots of incomings, certainly for United this summer, and we'll try and report on them as and when they happen. I mean, Cunha seems to be one that's told of. Liam Delap was another one. I think the Telegraph were reporting that's a little bit closer. Obviously, just two. I mean, goalkeeper, defenders, midfielders, United inside forwards, like we we're just talking about. Going to need plenty of them, plenty of everything. Ruben Amorim says he'll be next season. Next season. That's what he told the players, and we'll be backing him. I'll be backing him. I'm a supporter. That's what I do. Just my curiosity is whether or not we've got the necessity to actually fund what we need to do to get there. As a consequence of failure last week, still hard to be positive about that, even though we won yesterday. But we'll be back next season and throughout the summer as well. Thanks, guys, for staying with us all summer, all season, I should say. Enjoy your summer, and thanks so much for the support, the likes, the feedback, the joining in on the pods and all that all this season. Have a good one, and we will be back soon.